It's just going. All right,
hey,
good morning. David and Amanda here. Hope you guys are doing well. These videos are they come quick, right? Once a week is pretty much all we ask for you guys to watch and learn and share. Amanda, what's the topic again for today?
Today's topic, we're going to be discussing permits. We have talked about permits before, but it keeps on coming up. Yesterday we had our monthly meeting and some agents had some additional questions. And so the big thing is how to really deal with the permit issues, going a little bit further when handling buyers and sellers coming in and not just disclosing it, as we all know that we need to disclose it, but what's the next steps further that we should be taking?
All right. So as Amanda said, this is permit. Think of it like Rocky and Rocky 2. So permit 2. Okay. So now you have a property, you're representing a buyer, and you find out that based on the TDS or other disclosures that I think it's even on page 2 of the TDS that, hey, seller is putting yes or no that they had permits, work done without permits or with permits and whatnot, or things done not being in compliance to local building codes. And so what do you do with that information? All right, your buyer might be happy to move forward because the house looks great and they're just like, okay, no big deal, we don't care. But it can become an issue where now the city or the county, they're starting to look at what's available in the marketplace. So if you see something that's been marketed as renovated, city and counties, their compliance guys or inspectors are very much aware and contacting listing agents and contacting homeowners right away and pulling up property records to see that, hey, was a permit pulled and whatnot. So we're seeing that a lot. But as Amanda pointed out, the topic keeps on coming up with our agents. So one of the things that the big issue is who's going to pay for this work, right? And so when you're representing a buyer, you have one strategy. When you're representing a seller, you have one strategy. So Amanda, if you're representing a seller, and the seller discloses on the TDS that, and it could be a seller, it could be a neighbor, it could be, because that you guys always know that there's that one nosy neighbor, right? That says, oh, I remember in 1966 this happened here, or 1955, and this and this and that. Okay, that's great. The buyer's going to eventually meet that
Find
neighbor,
out.
right? So now when the seller, so let's say in this example, Amanda's representing a seller. They fill out the TDS form. She's been such a great agent, a realtor, that she's gotten all the disclosures done in advance, right? Hint, hint. So now the seller on the TDS says, boom, yes, done without permits, and yes, done without proper building codes, possibly one or the two or both. Amanda, so on that, what do you feel is your obligation now as an agent? I'm putting you on the spot because now you're aware of it.
Yes,
right?
You're aware, and it needs to be disclosed. So I believe you have drafted up some disclosures that our agents can use in these situations.
Perfect. So Amanda is going to explain to the seller that, hey, fine, you did this stuff. We get it. We understand you didn't get the permits. It may not be the end of the world, but she, as a very dutiful type of agent, is going to make sure that the seller is aware that, hey, this could come up in the context of the escrow period.
Yeah, and
the transaction. And then, now you're faced with a compliance, and worst case scenario is a possible tear down, depending on the type of improvement. So you want to make sure that you have that conversation. You as an agent are reviewing the TDS as well. You don't want to keep a blind eye and be like, okay, ignorance is bliss. I don't want to know. I don't want to. You need to know, because if it's disclosed, then you have standard of care, right, and fiduciary duty to share that, and also you want to advise your clients. So now I'll be the bad guy. So we'll reverse it, and I'm the buyer's agent. Amanda's representing the seller. So I, as a buyer's agent, see the TDS. I'm reviewing it, right? Every Realty One Group agent should be doing that, especially in the San Ramon branch. And so now I tell my buyers, guys, this is the situation. Let's review the disclosures. We see the TDS. We see that there's been a disclosure item that things have done without permits, and possibly maybe the building codes as well, depending on what the seller checkmark. My advice to the buyer is that, hey, you know what, guys, we've got to address this. And again, even though that they might be perfectly fine with moving forward with the transaction, but I need to alert them that this could become an issue, and I need to strategize on who's going to be paying for that, right? And in a competitive market, as a buyer's agent, I might advise the buyer that, hey, just take on that cost. Maybe it's minimal. Maybe, they might just have to do that. Or, maybe we can negotiate for the seller. But the thing that's really come up in the last couple of times is that when a buyer is willing to buy a property and the seller is fully disclosed, like they're not hiding anything, they've disclosed it. So in this case, Amanda, you've fully disclosed it. Okay, you've said my sellers have done these improvements without permits, blah blah blah. It's all been disclosed. But now me, being the buyer's agent, I can call the city or the county and say, hey, I just want to check out of curiosity, has any work been done on this? Have permits been pulled? Even though she's already told me that. Then the order goes out, the inspector goes out, they slap on a thing on the door or on the garage door saying, hey, cease and desist all work, blah, 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 until permits are made. All the work might have already been done. But that puts now Amanda in a situation where now she's got to share that, with her clients, right? And say that, hey, now this has come up, or the clients might be calling you.
Yeah.
The seller might just call you and say, hey, you know what, we got this thing. What's it about, and how are we going to address it? And all of a sudden you got some, now another hurdle in the transaction. So the solution is if that's the situation. So if you see on the TDS or another disclosure, or you are made aware, the solution is sort out who is going to be paying for it. So now if Amanda had found out that her sellers had done this work,
yes,
you may have already contacted me and said, hey, or negotiated with me and said, you know what, the buyer is going to be responsible for any of this work, or the seller is not going to be responsible, because it might be a competitive multi-counter situation, and you may even be able to address it where not that it's necessarily going to come up, but if the situation arises, buyer is responsible.
Okay, so now I have a question. So
sure.
Going back to me representing the sellers, they disclose this.
Right.
They want it to be known, hey, we've done our remodel and it wasn't permitted. So how do we go about saying, hey, protecting me? Because you said, yes, there's two ways, protecting the buyers and protecting the sellers. So me protecting my sellers, how can I put it in there? Is it going to be in this disclosure that you created that states, hey, any buyers, please know that, this has been done without permits. You will be responsible for any costs to incur.
Right, great.
You're buying this at,
Sure. So great question.
Yes.
So because, some of this stuff can really adversely impact the value, right? Because now let's say you have this structure and it has to be torn down and it's not worth the same thing. It may have been, this 4-bedroom and, or conversion or something, and now that has to be wiped clean. That can significantly impact value. So the thing is that the ideal situation is to get it permitted, right, from the get-go, or find a way to work. And most cities and counties that I've been seeing across my desk is that they're willing to work with you. They do collect some penalties sometimes, and they'll work with you typically. But ideally, have your contractor always take pictures. That's been the biggest focal point from the ground up. So whatever work that they're doing. And be nice to these folks. They have a tough job as it is dealing with the general public.
And they probably get some angry calls coming in too. So you just want to be that next person who's patient, nice, and friendly on the phone, and they'll treat you that way as well.
And just keep in mind, sometimes these things take time, and so your escrow can be extended and drawn out. But the main thing too, hopefully I'm going to address your question here, is that there's specific to, we've gotten 2 disclosures now written up. One is when the seller tells you, hey, or you've seen it through, you found out through the neighbor, like I mentioned, or you saw it on a TDS. So we have a seller disclosure saying that, hey, we as an agent are advising you, seller, that this could be a situation. And then we have one for the buyer side. So if the buyer is, you're representing the buyer again, you're seeing that these have been disclosed. that you were represented by. But what we're not doing within that disclosure is saying, hey, you got to pay for this or you got to pay for that, because it's a very unique situation to the property. And so what I advise is possibly doing an addendum and saying, it's still in your disclosure package, right? Because the disclosure package is still going to the buyer. And so it's already been disclosed that, hey, these aren't permitted. But the terms of the negotiation on the purchase agreement through an addendum ideally would be, hey, seller will take care of the cost or buyer will take care of the cost of it. Or maybe you guys will split it in half. But just be aware that this thing can pop up like that and throw your deal totally off track. So that's why we're coming back to it. And I know some agents don't want to necessarily get involved in asking them about permits and finding out about permits, but when it's indicated on the disclosures, you're involved. And you have to be advising your clients, because they're not the professionals in this situation, right? You're the professional, so you do owe them a duty, in my opinion, to allow that. But just make sure everything's documented and sorted out. But look at these 2 disclosures. And then feel free, again, contact us if there's anything else. But this is a permit number 2. We're coming to you from San Ramon. Enjoy your day, and share, like your comments here, or share your comments and like the video. But we'll be sending that out through our Facebook internal group. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Right,
have a great day.
Bye-bye.